Okay, so we're down to going over some of the tools that I bring with me. Already covered tubes and patch kits. Wanted to talk real quick about what I use for reinflation. I prefer a little hand pump when I run tubes. It's got a gauge on it. It's also got a high volume and then a high pressure setting. That's very handy, especially if you run tubeless. You'll really want that. But generally speaking, you want to make sure that the volume's good enough that it doesn't take you forever just to inflate a motorcycle tube. High pressure isn't that important if you're just running tubes, because you only need 8 to 20 pounds or whatever. This is more important if you're running a big adventure bike that actually doesn't have tubes at all. It's just a, the tires actually seal on the rim. Because if you do by chance break the bead while riding it flat accidentally, you've got to get the bead to reseat. So what I have for that is a CO2 cartridge and a small inflator. That burst of air will help to seat that tube. I also keep my valve stem core remover. If you remove the core and then use the CO2 cartridge, that quick burst of air will help inflate that tube really quick. When running regular tubes, I tend to bring this kit anyway. It's just an old Tylenol bottle that I put everything in to prevent this stuff from rattling around, and also to protect everything else from like the valve core remover, which has some pointy bits on it and such. But that's the only reason that I keep it in there. It just keeps everything all nice and compact and protected. Other tools and spares and such. I add the necessary wrenches that my toolkit, built-in toolkit on the bike doesn't cover. Yes, I only add exactly what I need for my bike. That means I might be missing tools that other people might need, but I try and cover just myself and hope they cover themselves. Needle nose, a lot of uses obviously, but my kit didn't have any. I add these mainly for dealing with bullet connectors on electrical. Without them, you really risk pulling wires out, especially if your hands are cold. Chain tool, very important. If you manage to jam your chain up, get a rock jammed in there, and you bend a few links, you're going to have to pop a few links out in order to try and put that back together with a master link and recover. That's about the only way you're going to pull that off. Some zip ties. Hose clamps, various sizes. I just keep them stored concentrically like that because that way they pack well. You can do a lot of repairs with hose clamps and a little bit of creativity. A bunch of chain master links and a couple of extra pieces of chain. Some small fastener spares for things that you know might typically get jarred loose on the bike. A little bit of electrical wire for any kind of issues you might have on that, and a little bit of electrical tape, as well as a couple of twist electrical connectors just to make that easy. Toe strap, very important, especially if not solo, but even when solo, it's valuable to have as well. I bring a steel stick, JB Weld, pretty handy. Loctite's not necessary, but I do bring some. This might not be terribly necessary, but these two together, actually, I really like having. If you're at a gas station, you can buy a can of WD-40, but it's going to be a full-size can, and you're going to waste a lot unless you take it with you. This little mini cans, this will last a long time for just doing a quick chain cleaning in a parking lot or on the trail even, especially if you have one of these little guys. This is funny, like a little brush basically that you twist onto the chain, and then once it's on, the chain is through the center, and you just run that up and down the chain, and it completely tears all the sand and mud out of the chain. And with WD-40, you get all that water out of the chain, and at least get the chain clean to where it's not just caked with mud and nasty grime that's gonna wear that chain down really quick. These two are very important. I don't bring chain lube necessarily unless I'm going for longer than a week. That's pretty much the majority of what I have here. I do bring my iPhone. I bring that camera typically, some way to record video. I could just use my phone, but that's a GoPro session that I'm recording this with, so I can attach it to my helmet and actually record video. I do use my iPhone, as I believe I mentioned earlier, for all my GPS needs. Pretty much handles everything I needed to do. Pretty much everything I've gone over, this is my standard setup, and I just add additional shirts, underwear and socks as needed, or other layers. So this is the bulk of what I've got. I'll try and put together another video at some point of packing this into luggage. All of this stuff, not counting the stuff that's going to be on my body, but all of this stuff, just by looking at it, this will fit in easily in 40 liters of space, probably in 30 without too much trouble. So there's really not a lot here. If you look at the size of various motorcycle luggage and options and such, you'll have a lot of options in this range. The hardest thing most people deal with is most people have one of those big, huge, bulky sleeping bags, and that's their only option. This saves a ton of space getting not really an expensive one. Even just planning to spend around $100 and keeping an eye out on sales. Typically, you can get a good synthetic 30-degree bag for $100 or less from, like, you know, REI's online sales or something like that, and it'll compress down almost this small. This one actually gets quite a bit smaller than this even, but you don't need to drop $350 unless you want to buy one that's going to last you the rest of your life. Then you can definitely go there, but I didn't do that until I was backpacking a lot and kayaking and all that, where I was going to get a lot of use out of it. I did spend a lot on one almost 10 years ago now, and it's still in absolute perfect condition, so it's a lifetime buy. Anyway, that's pretty much all of my gear. And if you have any questions, throw them in the comments. I'll try and answer, and I'll try and cover some other videos about things like how to pack it, and where I put everything, how I like to break everything up. Roto Adventure out.